Hey everybody, Chav and Nobody Else's Auto. We're here at one of the most amazing places on earth. Yep, we're in Minden, Nebraska. Minden, Nebraska. You say, what's so special about Minden, Nebraska? The Harold Wart Pioneer Village. Now, if you're hanging out on here, you're probably like old cars because that's what we talk about on here. This place, over 300 old cars. They have an absolutely amazing collection, and what we're going to share with you in this video is a very, very special car. Now, at a museum with over 300 cars, and if you look down the row here, we can see a very, very small sample of the cars in this collection. The one we're going to share with you today is very, very special. The 1936 Packard 12-cylinder coupe. Now, we're standing here in front of this car, and it is pretty amazing. Now, 1936, the United States is just starting to pull out of the Great Depression. There was not a lot of demand for big, powerful, beautiful luxury cars. Packard, in fact, one of the very few manufacturers that survived the Depression as far as the big premier luxury car builders. Pierce Arrow, Auburn, Cord, a lot of those cars did not survive the Great Depression. They were big, powerful, beautiful. They were also very expensive. During the Great Depression, a lot of people were worried about eating. They weren't worried about big, powerful luxury cars. So a lot of those manufacturers didn't make it. Packard, one of the few that did survive. Now, the 30s era Packards had a very distinct grille. They had this big archway across the top. They flattened out on the sides, up and down bars on them. And this one, being a 12-cylinder, has a very unique piece right down here that we definitely want to share with you. The Packard 12, right down here at the bottom, which was probably the crank hole cover. Now, while we're down here looking at this Packard, we see the front bumper, big flat bumper, big flat guards, and look at the corners of this thing. Big, huge, rounded corners with almost little towers on the corners of the front bumper of this Packard. Now, since we're down here looking at this Packard real close, we look at this front bumper and we see scuffs and scratches. We look over here at the fender, we see another scratch over there. And you say, this is a big museum collection. How come this car has scuffs and scratches? We're going to show you why. And that's a very, very unique feature about almost all the cars in this collection. These are not concours restored cars. Now, typically, if you see a 12-cylinder Packard today, it's had an over-the-top restoration. It's being shown at concours events. Not the cars here. These cars are primarily original. We'll come up over here and check out a little bit about this car on the display board they've got set up for it. Now, remember, this car is a 1936. This car was purchased for the museum on September 6th, 1955. Which is crazy to think. This car was 19 years old. This was essentially a 19-year-old used car when Harold Wart picked this up for his collection. He obviously understood the significance of this car and how special it was to grab it at that point and add to the collection. But this is basically an unrestored, what would at the time have been a used Packard that probably would have been on a used car lot even maybe. So kind of crazy to think that this car has been in this display for almost 70 years. It was only on the road for 19 years. And it is such a special car, and it is so original. That's what makes these cars so special, is the originality. Anybody can restore a car, and that's what happens to most cars like this, especially ones this significant. This car, to see it in an unrestored original state, is a very, very rare treat. And that's something you get here at the Harold Wart Pioneer Village. Now, if we come over here, we can take a look inside of this massive 12-cylinder engine. And the engine on this thing is a work of art in and of itself. You got to remember, most cars in the mid-30s still had an L-head 6. You know, Buick had gone to an overhead valve 8. Ford was, had come out with a flathead V8 in 32, but it was a very small flathead. You know, they were starting to get a little bit bigger by this point in time, but this engine is almost a work of art in and of itself. And a lot of people talk about originality on their cars, making sure they do have the parts that they were born with, and that's how they are. That's what's so amazing about this car. That's what it is. We can see the side mounts on this car. It had dual side mounts. This spare tire is worn down. It was a spare tire. In today's world of concours restorations on cars like this, you would never see that. It would have a brand new tire on it with full depth tread. because it would look like a show car. This car being only 19 years old when it was purchased and put into this collection, I guarantee you this is the spare tire that this car had on it in its side mount when it was going down the road in the early 50s. That's what's so awesome about this collection. Now, obviously, we're going to come up here. This is a 3-window Packard Coupe. We see it as a shorter roof line, if you can call it a shorter roof line, for a car of this size. You can kind of step back and get a good look at the overall size of this car, because this is not like a typical Ford Coupe of the mid-30s. It is a coupe, but it is a big, big car. By stepping back, you can see the length of that hood. I mean, I bet the hood is probably close to 5 feet long. Of course, you had a big 12-cylinder engine you had to cover up with that hood. Let's take a peek inside of this thing. Look how big this door handle is. When I put it on my hand, the length of the door handle goes all the way up to my wrist. It comes back, it curves down, it comes back to a fine point back here. All attention to detail that you saw on premier luxury cars in the 30s. We'll open the door on this awesome Packard and take a peek inside of it. It's got wear on the door panels. It's tattered a little bit because it's original. I don't know if the seat's been recovered or not, but the seat looks pretty good. The seat may have been restored at some point because it may have gotten just worn during basic use. That's what happened back in the day. Look at the dash on this car. Very, very beautiful dash. Big horn center with horn button on it. And if we look around the back, we can see it is a true coupe. There is no back seat. It just has a storage area back there, but no back seat that we can see from here. Another cool thing about this car is it still has the oil change stickers on it from the early 50s. Texaco Marfac, very common lubrication brand back in the day, still on the door from probably the last time this car was serviced in 1953 or 1954. Check out the sill plates, Packard, and all the detail in these sill plates. I believe this is actually wooden trim around this. It actually looks like wood, not just metal that was made to look like wood. And this car is a little bit dirty. It is a little bit dusty. It's been sitting here for 70 years, almost 70 years. Now, like we told you, we didn't see a back seat in there because the back seat is right here. Yes, this is a 12-cylinder rumble seat Packard Coupe. So that you could close this up, you could flip it up, and people could sit in it. And it's kind of tough to see because it's a little bit tight in here. But if we look all the way around the corner over here, we actually can see the steps that the passenger would climb up in and get into the rumble seat. Now those steps are on the right side. Our fuel was on the left side, had dual taillights, and by having a rumble seat, that meant you didn't have a trunk. So it has a luggage rack. It literally has a fold-down luggage rack on the back of this car that would kick out and sit flat, and you could put a trunk on the back of that rack. Another interesting feature is obviously we saw this big rear deck behind the seat. Another interesting feature this Packard has that was somewhat common on cars back in this day, a golf door bag. Right here on the side of the car, it is locked. You could open that up, and it was designed to slide a golf bag in, or whatever else, but they did call them a golf door bag just because that was kind of what would slide under that for your executive businessman in the 30s who was driving a big Packard Coupe. So many cool things about this car. Another thing, look at the hubcaps on this. We love ornaments and badges on here. Look at this big Packard 12. That's just an amazing ornament on this car as well. And another good thing, while we're down here looking this thing over, it's got the scuffs. It's got the scratches. Why? Because that's what happened to this car back in the 40s and early 50s when it was being used as basic transportation. It's kind of crazy to think about in today's world that we look at cars like this, whether it's a big heavy classic like this 12-cylinder Packard or like the muscle cars that a lot of people love. Back in the day, these cars were transportation. That's all they were. This, when it was new, was definitely an upper tier car, being a 12-cylinder Packard. However, 10, 15, 19 years later, this was a used car. Now, Harold Warp obviously had the foresight to snag something of this magnitude to add to the collection. There's a ton of cars here, and a lot of them are your regular four-door drivers. He had the foresight to snag this 12-cylinder Packard, put it in here right on the corner because he knew this was such a special car. So, amazing, amazing car. Super happy that they let us behind the rails to share this thing with you and get a better look at it. If you're anywhere near Minden, Nebraska, or if you're even coming through the middle of the United States, you need to make a detour to Minden, Nebraska, to the Harold Warp Pioneer Village Museum. This Packard, plus over 300 other cars. We see the rows of cars in these buildings. There are several buildings, most of them, believe it or not, double-decked, 2 layers of cars. And not only the cars, it's everything else, household items, trains, everything you can think of, even boat motors and airplane engines are here in chronological order, and it's an amazing collection. Hope you guys enjoyed the Packard. Be sure to click that subscribe button. Check out the Harold Warp Pioneer Village playlist on the channel for more videos from this place. And absolutely, it is a bucket list item. You have got to get to Minden, Nebraska and check out this collection. Thanks for watching, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the Packard. Stay tuned. We got more cool stuff coming from here.